how far do you get involved in local politics?
Really, you don't want to piss off the people who are being nice to you.
Well, you can see behind me and around me it's a beautiful morning. It is now time to head back to KK. Now, we haven't actually done any recording on the vlogging camera for quite some time because we've been hanging out at Big Fin, getting up to all sorts of activities, mainly diving.
I don't know, it's not really fighting, it's probably a bag. So much crap in the water. Look, this is why I need a belt, look. That's why I get bruises on the top of my leg.
Now, this part of our vlog was recorded back in April, but rather than skip this and bring you back up close to real time, we thought it important to cover this off. And there's a reason why we haven't discussed this publicly before now, which we'll discuss in a moment.
We're going to the captain's table right now to meet all the other yachties and to meet Alvin, who has some important news to give us. And considering that we've just been told by Malaysia that everyone has to be out, all foreigners have to be out by the 21st of April, we're hoping that the information is good information, but we'll find out in a minute. Been asked to put together a whole load of paperwork to submit to see if they will allow us to stay longer. Anyway, we'll find out in a minute, but it is all pretty worrying at the moment because none of us are quite sure what we can do. So that was the situation back then, and recently, a couple of episodes ago, you saw us in a similar situation where we had to redo our visas. But we didn't talk about the first time round, did we? Because it was very nail-biting and it was kind of political, and we didn't want to get too involved on camera at the time while it was going on, did we? No, it's something that we tend to avoid, I think, is getting involved too much in local politics.
Mr. Speaker, I bring your attention to the things.
Both on the vlog and also, I think, just generally as a rule. We tend to sort of keep our noses clean and heads beneath the parapet, I suppose. Yeah, because this was quite political. We'd been here for, God, I don't know, a year. And our visas, which had kept it being extended and then stopped, and then we were just allowed to stay from the grace of Malaysia, it all came to a head when the Immigration Department decided that all foreigners had to leave.
Run away! Run away!
You may have seen at the time Sailing Nanji, one of the other sailing channels that are in this part of the world, discussing in detail their terrifying journey into Malaysia to try and get their visas extended. It was good. I watched it. I don't know if you did. We thought we might do it, but we decided, as you said, not to do it for the political reasons that you stated, because really you don't want to piss off the people who are being nice to you. That's really the undercurrent of everything we do when we're abroad.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously useful to get to understand the local politics, and obviously as a cruiser to understand how decision-making policies affect you as a cruiser. And of course, you know, as cruisers, we have rights to some degree, but it's always something that's top of our minds, is just not to tread on people's toes and piss people off.
Especially when they're doing you a favour, which is what Malaysia have been doing. And they started, when this came out, they started to turf people out. They started to say you've got X amount of days, 10 days, whatever it was, 14 days to get out. And the majority of cruisers had to get out at that time. A lot of them did. We were slightly luckier than those in Langkawi because here in Sabah, although it's part of Malaysia, it's a separate state with its own rules, but they still have to abide by the federal rules of Malaysia. There's only a few of us boats here, there's only a few cruisers here, so we were able to use our friend Alvin. And Alvin was able to put our case to Sabah. It got that close. In fact, he took me in and we met the head of immigration for the whole of Sabah, who was not a happy man.
Now that was an example of Liz actually getting involved in local politics. But of course it was because you were invited basically.
By a local.
By a local. That's not something that we would normally do.
No, we had Malaysian friends in the mainland. We had Sazli as head of Sail Malaysia and James, head of Pancor Marina.
And we are lucky because we do have these contacts. I think Gary, who's a viewer of our channel, he's based up in Korea, and he got in touch after one of our last videos and said, you guys are lucky to have people like Alvin fighting your cause. Those guys in Korea, they have to go to immigration every 2 months. They're not even allowed off their boat, I don't think.
Yeah, that's right.
And they have to go to immigration every 2 months to update their visa because they cannot leave, especially this time of year with all the weather that's going on up there. They are well and truly stuck. And that's when you do really have to start shouting, fighting for your corner.
Yes,
so
but you can't shout too loud in Southeast Asia. You cannot upset anyone because if you do, bye-bye, they don't care.
This particular situation was as a result of a kind of knee-jerk reaction, a policy that was just suddenly put out there without any real thought. And, you know, when we spoke to both expats and locals about this, no one could understand the logic behind it. But I have to say, this happens the world over.
Yes.
The government will suddenly push through some kind of legislation without any real thought about the long-term consequences, and the public is left going, well, what on earth was the thinking behind that?
Come and have a rich tea biscuit.
And that's exactly what happened here.
They didn't realise they were going to sweep up people who actually they wanted in the country, because they were really trying to get rid of the people they didn't want, the illegitimate people who were, say, trading and doing all kinds of things, nefarious things. They wanted them all out. But of course they were throwing the baby out with the bathwater. People like us who are paying lots of money into the state, they need the money. So anyway, you know all that. That's what we went through. And thank you, Malaysia. Thank you, Sabah.
But it's we just wanted to emphasise this point because we'd be interested to know what you think. How far do you get involved in local politics? When it affects you directly, then, you know, at what point are you pushing it too much with the potential of pissing off your hosts, basically?
Yes, and we know that on social media they are watching us, so you can't even say anything on social media. We never say anything on Facebook that we wouldn't say to someone's face, do we?
Actually, that, just as an aside there, that's an interesting one because, of course, we use social media to get updated information on situations like this. I've backed off from Facebook. I don't really use it anymore. There is a tendency, if you are not careful, to get involved in a gossipy he said, she said. And if you're not careful, you can end up in a situation where you wind each other up. We didn't want to make a drama out of something in which we didn't have all the facts for. So that was another reason why we kind of, you know, took a step back from this situation.
Well, here we are now. We've got through that. And what's happening next?
What's happening next? Well, okay, so we came down to KK literally just for this information, this meeting with Alvin. We gave him our documents, and that was it. We could go off again, but not before another little dive. And this time it was with down below Richard's crew, who are based just at Gaia, just over there. And I just have about a minute's worth of footage I wanted to show you because this is video footage taken with the TG5, which I've mentioned in the past. And I mentioned that there were a couple of issues that I found with the TG5, and I think that's quite clear in this little sequence, which is very pretty, but I'll come on to that afterwards. So pretty little sequence there, but I have mentioned in the past a couple of issues that I have with the TG5, and that is that underwater filter. You can see that I used it on all the clips in this episode. Now you'll see that the colour balance in half of those clips was pretty good. But it does introduce a little bit too much red, and you'll notice I was making a mistake in some of those clips where I was also using a white torch, a white light torch, and what's happening is that I'm actually lighting up subjects with that red filter, so they take on a little bit too much red. So that was just something I wanted to highlight. The other issue I've mentioned in the past is focus hunting, and this is something that the TG5 suffers from. That's where the autofocus can't quite manage to stay focused on one particular subject. It's constantly jumping backwards and forwards. Now the way around this is to zone focus your camera. All that means is locking off the focus at a preset focus distance. Now I use this in street photography, and you can use it while you're snorkeling. The problem is with the housing, to lock off that focus, you need to half press one button whilst pressing another button. And unfortunately with my housing, it just wasn't possible. So that was the other issue I was finding, was constant focus hunting. You're really interested in this, aren't you?
Just show us some pretty pictures.
Yeah, but I would say actually the TG5, you were saying, weren't you, that it's a good all-round camera to have.
Yeah, because what I was saying was that as cruisers, you never want your tool just to do one thing. You want it to do as many things as possible. And I tell you what that camera's also brilliant for is when we are sailing in terrible weather and we've got lightning and thunder and rain everywhere in the cockpit, we can't get your flashy camera out, TG5 comes out. You can go up on deck, you can get the rain, it's brilliant.